We have lots to talk about today, including the news that Jacob Markstrom of the Calgary Flames apparently wants out and will not want to play another game for the Flames. He's been linked to 3 teams. We're going to discuss some possible trades, how things have been going, and where things are likely going to head. Also, we have an update on Mitch Marner and what is going to take for the Leafs to talk to him about his no-move clause, as Trevor Zegras an option for the Ottawa Senators. Been a lot of links to them as of late after being linked to Montreal for an extended time. Seems to be getting most of the play to the Sens right now. We'll discuss if that makes sense or how that could work out. We also have some other big updates around the league as well, including CapFriendly, one of the best websites for fans to follow along. All the contracts is being purchased by an NHL team and being shut down. Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final was last night. Plus, we also have some news on potential changes coming to the draft. According to Elliot Friedman, some things are being discussed. We'll discuss all that and some UFA rumblings coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to cover today. Let's get started first with talking about Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, which went down last night, of course, which was Saturday night in Florida, with the Oilers traveling down and unfortunately dropping Game 1. The Panthers picked up a 3-0 victory. Sergei Bobrovsky was unreal. The Oilers greatly outshot the Panthers. For the most part, outplayed them as well. The Panthers, to me, they did not that they played a poor game. They really didn't. They were very opportunistic, and they played well defensively, and they get great goaltending. But really, as far as generating goes, the Oilers really contained them. The Oilers had the puck, which felt like the bulk of the night. But they did make a few mistakes. When they did, Florida capitalized. And then, of course, the Oilers just could not get one by Bobrovsky, even though they had a lot of grade A opportunities. Unfortunately, he just was one of those nights where he wasn't letting anything in. No power play goals for either team. There were certainly some calls that went towards each team that were a little bit questionable. There was definitely some stuff that was not called because it's the playoffs. I know I see a lot of fans online complaining about this and that. It's like, you got to remember, playoff hockey is not the same standard. There was definitely a little bit of embellishment, I think, on both sides, trying to sell stuff. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. And overall, I thought it was a pretty entertaining game. Obviously, lots of build-up here with the last week, but at the end of the day, the Panthers take the game, like I said, 3-0. Barkov was a fantastic player for the Panthers last night. Was a big part of the one of the first goals for the Panthers, and he was really solid defensively. I know on that goal from Verhaeghe, there was a couple of mistakes on that play. One was McDavid. He needs to stay above Barkov on that play coming back. He went in, and Barkov was probably, I'd say, 2 strides ahead of him, and as fast as McDavid is, he just couldn't catch him. And then, of course, once they get into the zone, Cody Ceci and Darnell Nurse paired together again, and I'm like, why are they on the ice together? I don't know what Knobloch's doing. The coach has done all the right things for the Oilers, pushed all the right buttons for the most part, but moving away from that pair was a big upgrade, and they go back to it. I don't get it. They are not good together at all. Darnell Nurse is having one of the worst, defensively speaking, of course, one of the worst playoff runs we've seen by a defenseman, especially someone who plays as many minutes as he does. It's just not good at all. So a couple of mistakes in that goal, like I said, one from CC, one from McDavid. And then it just, at the end of the day, the other one as well, the second goal that Rodriguez scored, I mean, Darnell Nurse, again, the puck's in the corner. He doesn't have a stick on the ice. If he's got a stick on the ice, he probably picks off that puck coming out to middle ice where he gets it to roof it above Skinner. So just, like CC Nurse were on the ice for the first 2 goals, and they still didn't make changes. I would hope in the next game they make changes. I thought Broberg, for a youngster without very little experience, I thought he was pretty good, very noticeable. Fogel looked pretty good getting back in the lineup, had lots of speed. Draisaitl, I think, could have been better. Wasn't sharp enough last night. But at the end of the day, goalie Bobrovsky stole the show, and so far that's what happened. So we'll see how Game 2 goes. I know the team that wins Game 1 does have a very high percentage of winning the cup in the final round, but at the end of the day, it is only one game, and it's not that unusual to see a different swing of things. The way the Oilers have played lately wouldn't be surprising if they did win Game 2 and tie it up and go back to Edmonton on a split. I think they would take that, and really for Florida to go on a split, they'd probably take that too. So I really think it's going to be a longer series. I think eventually the Oilers will find a way to break through. They don't have a lot to be upset about. They played a good game, a few defensive lapses, and that's the difference. So we'll see how it goes for Game 2. We got some pretty big news today from Elliotte Friedman regarding the popular website CapFriendly. Now, of course, I know I access CapFriendly probably 10 times a day, it feels like. It's the go-to resource for fans, media, people around the NHL for accessing information on contracts. I mean, they have a great site where you can look at any given point and see where, how much available space the team has, all the contract breakdown, the clauses that are included, for their full reserve list. Like, there's just so much in there, and it's phenomenally built and it's easy to navigate. Everybody loves CapFriendly, and now we find out today that the Washington Capitals are buying it, and it's going to be going dark sometime after free agency. So they wanted to leave it open because they know how much it's a popular site for fans during the draft and free agency. So it's going to be open for the draft, the first probably 4 or 5 days of free agency, and then the site will be taken offline. So essentially, I think the only thing I can gather here, because the Capitals and all teams in the NHL kind of use this as well. It's not just fans. This is very much used by the NHL and NHL teams across the board. And honestly, I think they're just trying to take away a resource that their competitors are using, I guess. I don't really know. I'm not sure how they think they're going to get a leg up, because to be honest, we also have Puckpedia. Puckpedia is a great alternative. To me, I like Puckpedia for different things. They have some different information that CapFriendly doesn't. But I just like if I had to give a preferred one, I would say CapFriendly. I just like the way it's laid out better. But a lot of the same information is on Puckpedia. And there's also a new site called CapSpace, which I seen somebody share on Twitter earlier, and I looked at it, and you know what? It was pretty well done as well. So there's alternatives out there, and some of the top analytics people are already talking about building a CapFriendly alternative. So I have no doubt that this is going to be... to me, wasted money by the Capitals. I don't understand the motivation here to do this. I do understand the motivation from the CapFriendly founders. If they're going to make a handsome payday, then I think they have to do that. It could be life-changing money. Like, you know what I mean? So that I understand. But we'll see where this goes, and we find out a little bit more. But yeah, CapFriendly will only be around until about July the 5th approximately. So we'll see. Some other news that could impact the NHL draft down the road. Hard to say, but there's some rumblings, according to Elliotte Friedman, that some of the NHL agents and some members of the PA think that the NHL draft should be reduced by the number of rounds that it has. Right now, they feel like 7 rounds is too much, and that maybe dropping it down to about 4 might be a better way to go. And the thought rationale behind this is that a lot of picks that go in rounds 5, 6, and 7 especially, a decent amount of them don't end up getting contracts and don't get signed. So, of course, the team that picks them in the draft owns their rights, and sometimes it's been for 2 to 4 years before they're, let go in a free agent. So during that time, they might be with a team where they might just not have an opportunity to really have a real legit chance. And of course, they don't really get any say over who picks them in the draft, right? So making those players, at that point, they would become undrafted. And when you're undrafted, you're an unrestricted free agent. Those players, not to say that they wouldn't be given NHL opportunities, but they would be just the free agent crop coming out of junior. Because right now you see it out of college a lot for players who didn't get drafted and stayed in school longer. And you would see more and more, because there's some that make it out of junior that don't get drafted too. But it would be a bigger crop that would have that opportunity and be able to sign wherever they wanted. So they could be a little bit more picky and choosy on where they would get the opportunity. So, at the same time, some people might argue, well, you know what, getting drafted in the NHL is an honor, it's a privilege, and you really, if you're going to make it, it shouldn't really matter which team you go for. And to some degree, there's some truth to that. But if you end up in a spot where, the team picks you and there's just too many other comparable players that are ahead of you on their depth chart in that particular position you specialize in, then it's going to be very much impossible. You see young players all the time get moved to another team where they can get a bigger role and they flourish. So hard to say if anything will come from that, but it is something that's kind of being talked about behind the scenes by various members, like I said, of the agent group and PA. So we'll see. I don't foresee anything changing for a while, but it's something we could see down the line. A couple of rumblings in the UFA world, since we're not far from free agency. Jets defenseman Brendan Dillon definitely will be heading to free agency. He's not expected to re-sign with the Winnipeg Jets at the very least. I think it's fair to say, based on what we've heard, that he's definitely going to market. Doesn't mean it's not possible that he may, still pivot back to the Jets, or they may increase their offer. Maybe they try to keep him. But just as of listening to him speak to a couple of interviews recently, and with the information coming from insiders, it doesn't sound like Dillon and the Jets are going to be extending their relationship, so to speak, and that he's very, very likely to move on. So we'll see. Another name to watch is Dakota Joshua out of Vancouver. There are some rumblings that he might be able to fetch as much as $4 million. I don't think the Canucks are going to go anywhere near that. I can see them going 2.5, maybe 3. Beyond that, I don't think he really works for their cap as much as they like the player. I honestly think $4 million is an overpayment. I don't think the sample size is big enough, but if you're willing to take that chance, it really boils down to term. There's been some rumblings that a team like Detroit might be a landing spot for Joshua, but we'll see, of course. Hard to say if those rumblings have anything to them. Time will tell. At the end of the day, Dakota Joshua will be one of those players that can play a bottom 6 or middle 6 role. Definitely had a good season and a good playoff, and certainly turned some heads and got a lot of more attention. And, it's going to be more of a payday for him than he ever would have had otherwise. There's no doubt about that. But whether or not he ends up leaving Vancouver or getting exactly that amount of money remains to be seen. We'll have to wait and see. When it comes to Mitch Marner, we have another statement regarding that to take a look at. Nothing too major, but I know the Toronto Star and Steve Simmons, and I don't typically read Steve Simmons' columns. I don't really care for Simmons too much, but he did make a really good point, I thought, with one of his recent ones, and I saw some quotes being shared from the article and took a look at it. And he says that the Maple Leafs, it doesn't make sense for them basically to approach Mitch Marner and to talk to him about waiving his no-move clause until they have a deal and that they want to accept, that they feel makes the team better, and that they'd like to move ahead with, and they need his consent. At the end of the day, I think everybody around the NHL, it's no secret, knows that the Leafs and Brad Treliving and Brendan Shanahan are wide open for business. They don't want to leave anything off the table, and I think it's pretty well documented that they would consider trading Mitch Marner if the right offer comes along. So I think they're kind of, just having their conversations. I don't know how actively they're shopping him. I don't know if that's fair to say at all. I think if anything, they're having conversations probably on a daily basis with a variety of teams, trying to figure out how to make the team better. I'm sure Marner does come up from time to time, and if they find a deal for him that somebody offers that they think is too good to pass up, they will go to Marner. So if you hear reports and leaks coming out saying, well, as of right now, they haven't asked Marner to waive, so that means he's staying, to me, that's not the case at all. Until they get that right, there's no point in talking to him. Really, there's 0 sense. Because at this point, just like what we saw happen with Jacob Markstrom, what we're going to talk about here in a couple minutes, is that he thought he was getting traded, and then he fell through at the last minute. And then he got really grumpy about it and didn't like how it was handled, and it's causing a lot of friction. So you don't want that, especially, where he could have to ride out the rest of the year with the team. So at the end of the day, just because the team hasn't asked him yet, it doesn't mean it won't happen. Doesn't mean it will either. But if we hear stories about him not being asked, it doesn't mean a trade isn't something that's going to happen, or less likely or more likely or anything of that nature whatsoever. I know when it comes to the Sens, they've been getting a lot of talk around Ottawa, and one name that's been brought up here in the past week, I've seen a lot of articles and people talking about it as a potential trade target, is Trevor Zegras. We did touch on this a few days ago, and to be honest, after looking at it further, it keeps coming up. Zegras was being linked to Montreal, it seemed like forever, since the season ended. And now it seems like that's kind of shifted. I know a lot of reporters have said they don't see Montreal making the trade, even though they've resumed talks with the Ducks. They reconnected was the words used by some reporters. But it was believed that the asking price from the Ducks was going to be more than Montreal wanted to pay, and therefore it was very much unlikely, unless the Ducks come down a lot on their asking price. So now, lately, it's all been, well, Ottawa's in there too. They might be looking at Zegras. I'm like, to be honest, like I seen one article from the Hockey News made a good point. They already have enough what you'd call soft skill. They don't need more of that. They need less. They want to take that skill, insulate it with some more. I know Brady Tkachuk's a unicorn kind of player. You can't really, find more like him. But they want to add more skill with grit, skill with toughness, not, soft skill. Unless they're going to offer up Josh Norris or somebody like that who's often injured, and the Ducks go for that, which I can't see happening, then I don't see them making that kind of deal. At the end of the day, the Ducks have some good center prospects. They have some good wing prospects, which is why Zegras is being considered for trade. The only other option here that I guess the Sens would have that Anaheim would probably be interested in would be Jakob Chychrun. Again, I don't know that that's a deal that I would necessarily make. I don't know if that makes the Sens better because you have to figure out replacing Chychrun on the back end. I know they want to change the dynamic of their blue line. And ideally, they need to add a right shot defenseman to replace him, preferably somebody who can move the puck, skate well, and defend well. Trevor Zegras is none of those things. So if Chychrun is moved and it's not for a goaltender, I would certainly be quite surprised if it would be for a forward, especially one like Zegras. Zegras is a great player, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying he's too similar to some of the guys they have. It doesn't seem to me like it would be a great fit. I'm sure some Sens fans would be thrilled to have him on the team, and it's not even a case of that. I just think with building this team to being tougher to play against, having more skill, at the same time as size and toughness, which seems to be a focus for this team, I just don't know how he really, adds to that and ticks all those boxes. But we'll see. I mean, if they can figure out adding him and it's the right pieces going out, then maybe it works. But to me, those rumors don't make a lot of sense. But we'll see where things go. Now, as I mentioned, Jacob Markstrom has been the hottest topic today. We've gotten word in the last 24 hours here. Started with Kevin Woodley, who writes for InGoal Magazine, NHL.com. He's kind of known as a goalie whisperer. Is obviously a very well-known goalie guru around the NHL. He has said on a radio hit that, from what he knows, Jacob Markstrom not only would prefer a trade, but that he has no intention of wanting to play for the Flames again, and he wants a trade. There's a big difference. So last year, leading into the deadline, there was talk that Markstrom was open to it. Of course, that's where things are at. We get close to the deadline. We're hearing New Jersey is actively pushing to acquire him. It gets to the point that the Flames ask him to waive his no-move clause. He says yes, but then the deal doesn't happen. And he did not like how things were handled. He did not like how everything played out. And he certainly seemed quite grumpy about the fact that it never materialized. So with all that said, it was believed that he was likely going to prefer a trade in the offseason. And we at least knew now that he was certainly open to it. But now we're hearing that not only open is not the right word, it's wants it and does not want to go back there. So now we're hearing three teams being in the mix. Of course, the Devils are still the team that was interested at the deadline, and they're still having some degree of interest today. We do know that they're also involved in some other goalie conversations and rumors too. From what we're hearing, it sounds a little bit less likely that UC Saros gets traded. So you're looking at Markstrom and Allmark being the main two experienced guys that have had good success lately that are possibly on the market. And the teams that have been linked to Markstrom besides the Devils right now, apparently according to Friedman, are Toronto and Ottawa. He said that the Ottawa Senators are involved with pretty much every goalie conversation that's out there. When it comes to either moving Korpisalo or acquiring a replacement, every big-time goalie trade conversation taking place around the NHL, the Sens are in there. So that's, I guess, for Sens fans, really positive news. It sounds like they're going to do everything they can to address that position, which is super important. But when it comes to Markstrom, we know the Devils had a package lined up. So the Flames probably already know what they can do there. So they're pushing, they're having conversations. Friedman said that there's something on the go for sure. So they're, whether or not that deal gets done, hard to say. But we already know that, is likely going to involve, you're looking at probably three pieces. You're looking at the Devils' first round pick. You're looking at a young defenseman. It was rumored to be Seamus Casey, and then there was rumored to be a forward in there, whether it be Holtz or Mercer. So that's likely what New Jersey's probably still pushing here. In terms of Toronto and Ottawa, I'm not sure what the Toronto offer would be, but we know Brad Treliving is the one who signed him to bring him to the Flames in the first place. Makes sense there'd be interest. The other good thing about Markstrom is, compared to a lot of the guys that are UFA, is you have UFA goalies out there that might be commanding similar money or close to it, but they're going to want a lot more term than 1 or 2 years, where you get Markstrom for 2 years. And, with his age and where a lot of these teams are at, it gives them a good window to work on their own goalie development within their system and have somebody ready to take over in a couple of years' time when the contract runs out. So it makes sense that the Toronto Maple Leafs would have interest too. I don't know what their offer would be. I've seen one offer when it comes to Ottawa that would make sense. It would involve the Sens and the Flames also swapping first-round picks, because Ottawa picks at 7, Calgary picks at 9. We know they'd love to have a Ginla. They may not be able to get him at 9, and having this go the way it would allow them to move up. So it would basically give Markstrom to Ottawa along with the 9th overall pick. In exchange, you get the 7th overall pick going back to Calgary, as well as the other first rounder they have from the Boston Bruins, which is, I believe, 26. And then another piece as well, maybe a defenseman like an Eric Brandstrom or another prospect in the organization. So that gives the Flames essentially multiple pieces going back for Markstrom, including a first rounder and a prospect, and also getting moved up in the draft, which has value too. So the Sens drop down to 9. They still get a pick high in the first round. They still get a top 10 pick. With a Ginla probably going higher, that probably still changes the likelihood, or gives more likelihood that the defenseman that Ottawa would still be there. There's a variety of them I think they'd like to have between Dickinson, Parekh, Bouillon. They're all players that I think Ottawa's got their eyes on here. So, I'm not saying that's exactly what the deal could be, but it makes sense that those two teams could work out something that would be very much, good for both sides. Now, whether or not Jacob Markstrom wants to go to Ottawa, that's another story. I know I read one article when it comes to Markstrom and Ullmark both that, they might be more inclined to go to a team like the Senators or the Devils, because they're seen as like up-and-coming teams, whereas some teams, they may not be, thrilled with where things are at logistically, with being competitive, right? So a team like LA, for example, is kind of at a point where they've lost in the first round 3 years in a row. You've got an older core. They could see heavy turnover in the next couple of years. That team could really change a lot. So it'd be a short run, but at the same time they have short contracts. So there's the belief that there might not be a lot of interest in either got to go to a team like that they might prefer to go to an up and coming team. But again, that's just speculation, hard to say with any kind of certainty, but for Ottawa to get in the mix, it certainly makes sense. But they would have to move Korpisalo. Now, whether or not he could be involved in the trade, again, I don't know that the Calgary Flames would want to do that. But I guess if the Flames are looking at rebuilding and knowing that they're not going to be as competitive, maybe they're more comfortable taking on Korpisalo. That would be one of the main ways to do it. But, if an offer like the Devils are looking at, they don't need to take a contract like Korpisalo. So I think the Sens might have a tough time winning that battle. Because to get a starting goalie, whether it's Ullmark, whether it's Markstrom, or any of the higher ranked goalies, they're going to have to move Korpisalo either in that trade or a separate trade, and that is going to be a problem for them based on the year that he had. So let me know your thoughts. Obviously Markstrom wanting out of Calgary, we knew that this was likely, but to know now for sure that he does not want to go back, and these are the three main teams pushing for his services. Where do you see him landing? Give me your mock trades down in the comments. Let me know how you think this is going to play out, and we'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.